So, welcome to our first class. And today I'm going to introduce you to Procreate and some of the bits of Procreate that we'll be using, some of the functions we'll be using, and we'll make a digital stamp. We'll make more next week, and the ones we make next week will be more complex. But this week, I just want to go over the basics of how to do it. So just understanding how to use Procreate, how to use the various functions we need for stamping, and then we'll just stamp it. But I have also switch here. So if people want to do it on Lino, you can do this on Lino. So this, oh, it's a bit fuzzy, isn't it? This is just a little kit that I bought that is a Lino cutter, and it comes with these two, I'll show you, these two little pieces of soft cut. So you can just make a small stamp. You can also just use an eraser. But this kit, when you open it up, it's got the blades inside. So, and it was, I don't know, it's about $8, something like that. It wasn't very much. So when you've put your Lino cutter together, you just stick the blade in. Oh, I'm doing it off camera. Stick the blade in there. I think I've put it in the wrong way. I have. It's new, so it's not going in very easily. Sorry, I will try again. You can put, oh, there we are. So you put the blade in, and then you can cut your soft cut with it. So I have bigger pieces here as well. This is much easier than Lino to cut. So, I mean, it's literally called soft cut, and you can get it at any art store. It might be called something different in the US, but I doubt it. I mean, soft cut is just really easy. So as we're going along, I will tell you how to do the various things we're doing with stamps with your Lino cutter, so that you can go away and get one of these, or if you've already got a Lino cutter, you can play that way. But for today, I'm mainly going to be focused on the iPad. So just before we started, I had a question about importing pictures. Just checking, yeah, that is working. Importing pictures. If you've got them in a document, because I know I put them in a PDF document, you can just go onto the page with that picture on and screenshot it and save it to photos. That's probably the easiest way of saving your photos. And then what I do in my photos, if I open it, I've got, let me just use the pointer to show you. I've created an album. And I just put the photos in that I want to use in that album. So I've got a drawing expressions album, and everything we're going to use over the next few weeks is in there. So it's easy to find, because in my library, I've got several thousand pictures. I mean, there's 16 photos in there, and it doesn't actually tell me how many, but I've got thousands. So the only way to realistically find things is to make a separate album, and then it'll be easy for you to find. So I'm going to go out of that right now, and I'm going to open Procreate. So I wanted to say something as well about how to organize your images in Procreate. So what I do, what I've done pretty much from the start. So I've had this iPad for a while. So you can see I've got lots of different stacks in it, but mostly I just put on them the month, the year, and then the month. So this one is like 2024/03 for March. So all my pictures are in different months. Occasionally there are other things. So I've got some block prints there, but mostly I just do them by month. You need 2 pictures. You can't create a stack if you've only got one. But so I've got ones, I've got sort of, so for last year, I have 2023 /, and then I've got from 01 to 12. So I've got one for every month. And I just find that an easy way of organizing them and finding what I'm looking for. And I used to, I'm not very good at it now. I usually back up each month when I've done it, so that I've got it saved somewhere, because it has happened to me that Procreate has crashed and I've had to reinstall it. And if you do that, you lose your library, or I did that time anyway. So it is worth backing up. So that's just, I find that's a good way of storing. You have to put the month first. Sorry, you have to put the year first and then the month, because otherwise they end up in a weird order. I don't understand why. But if you do it by month and then slash it and do it by year, sorry, then slash and put the month, it's relatively easy to find what you're looking for. But today we're going to be doing, so I thought I'd show you some of the, yeah.
This is Deb, so great to see you.
And you.
Just curious. So when you do your monthly backup, where do you back them up to? Just a hard drive or a thumb drive or what?
I back them up to the cloud. So I've got a cloud account. So
Okay.
I just back them all up there. I do have a hard drive as well that every so often I will then back up everything on a hard
Mhm.
drive. But monthly I try and just put them in so just in the files. So you can, if you click on a month, it comes up saying select, and then if you select them, you can share them. And I just share them and send them to I try and do it in Procreate form, because then if I have to reinstall Procreate, they'll come back up in Procreate. I always, every drawing I do, I also save to my photos.
Yeah.
So just in case.
Yeah.
So I have
Yeah.
one of my photos, which is the one that I would upload if I was sharing it, but I try and back up what I've done. I'm not very good at it though. I haven't done it for a while. I have to say, I used to do it regularly every month, but I'm a bit, yeah, probably every 3 or 4 months
I try to
these
keep up
days.
with backing up in Drive.
Yeah.
And I have any photos I have are in Google Photos.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I was going to show you. So these are what we're going to be doing this week and next week. These are various ones that I've made. Most of them I made. I mean, I did block printing 2 or 3 years ago, so most of them are quite old. This one I've just done for this class, and I've got a new fox one which isn't in here. It's in my brushes. But basically, this is what we're going to do, and it's really easy to do. But we're going to start by just learning what to do with Procreate. So I'm going to start just by opening a new canvas. So you click on the plus up there and it gives you options. You probably don't have the same options as me because some of these are ones I've created for my own purposes. Usually I use an A4 one if I'm drawing, but if you're doing a block print, you need a square one. So if you just click on square, this is so you can make it into a stamp. It needs to be square to be turned into a Procreate stamp. So before we do any making stamps, I just want to introduce you to all the different functions. I know some of you have done this before, but
Helen,
it never hurts.
Helen,
Yeah.
should we be doing this as you do it, or are we just watching right now?
You don't need to do it as I do, but it might help you to remember if you do.
Okay. Okay.
I usually think if you do something, it's easier to remember. So we start off with a square. And so I wanted to say something about brushes. So I have lots and lots of brushes. I mean, really, I'm not kidding. It goes on forever, my list of brush sets. There are actually only about 10 that I use now. So over the years, I've picked up lots of free ones and also bought some and then found better ones. So everything I do here, I'm going to use the brushes that come with Procreate so that you don't have to go out and buy some. But if you do want to buy some for something, I'm happy to recommend some of the ones I use, but that's entirely up to you. So what I've done here is you can see I've created a little brush set at the top called DX. And if I open it, these are the brushes we're going to be using for printing. So the Studio Pen and a heavy metal texture. And this is one I made last week. This is a little fox stamp. So I'm just going to stamp the fox stamp to show you, to do that, to show you what it will look like when you've done one. So I can stamp them everywhere. So, and you can make those bigger or smaller. You can, I mean, I'm trying to think, is it touch? No, it's not. It's not pressure. It's not dependent on the pressure. But if I just, sorry, you don't need to do any of this. I'm just showing you what we'll be doing. If I clear the layer, why is that now black? I have no idea. I don't know why I've got a black layer. Yeah, so if you put one on, you can make it, if you stamp with one, you can make it bigger or smaller by using this button here. So you can just enlarge, move it around, make it smaller. So to enlarge, you have to tap on the corner and pull the corner out. So if you get the corner and tap it, it will go bigger and smaller. If you tap it in the middle with your pencil, you can then move it around. So you just have to get it in the middle. So it takes a bit of practice to be able to do that very easily. And the little green button here, if you tap on the green button and move it, you can rotate your image. I generally find it easier to use these if I want to rotate it. I'll usually just rotate. If you click on rotate 45%, it just moves around. So I will generally use, if I can use the buttons at the bottom, I'll use those rather than this rotate button, just because I don't want that window, which keeps appearing. Yeah, if you knew exactly what angle you wanted to rotate it at, you can just put it into the box there, but I've never used that ever. So it's just annoying. So that's what we'll be doing later. So I just wanted to show you. So what we're doing to do that is we're creating, if you look here, an actual stamp. So the image is there and you can see the stamp. I'm just going to show you some of the others. When I find them in my list of stamps, my list of brushes, I can show you some of the others, just so you have an idea of what. Here we are. So I have a folder called block printing. All of these are ones that I've drawn. So that one's a landscape. That one's a landscape. There's some pigs. I made some cards for a farm. So these were all based on their photos. So that was, can't remember what those birds are called. So that's another landscape. That's a selfie. So, and then we have lots of leaves. There's a vase of flowers, pretty much everything. And these are all animals. So we've got a greyhound. This is my dog. So if I pick that stamp, I can show you. Oh, he's very big. Hold on. I need to do that lighter. Let me just empty that layer. He's still very big. I need a bigger canvas because I made it a very big stamp. So we have, there's a zebra. There's the bear. So if I clear it, I can show you the bear. Yeah, he's very big as well. I need a bigger canvas and then I can shrink him down, but I've done it. I've created 2 smaller canvas today. But all of these are basically, so there's lots of birds, there's lots of flowers further down. Yeah, and there's a butterfly, dragonfly, and some dinosaurs I made. So it's very easy. We're more or less, we're tracing the image and then deciding what kind of features you want on that image. So we'll be doing that. We'll probably start today with some leaves, just doing some simple leaves. But I wanted to just show you what we can do with it. So I'm also going to show you how to import and export. So if you come up here, this is probably the most valuable button. So it's all the different actions that you can do. So if you want to insert a photo, if you click on that, it brings up your photo album. And then if I go down to the one that I've called Drawing Expressions, it then has all the pictures that I put in there that I thought we might use for stamping. Not these two, the guys are for drawing later, but the others are all for stamping. So I brought those in. So you can just, then if you just click on the one you want. So if we choose the robin, then the image appears. And you can just go to the bottom here to fit it to your canvas. And make them a bit larger if you want to. To enlarge them, you just put 2 fingers here and pinch them apart. And it will get bigger, or you can just use this button here. So you might also want to insert a file. So if you've got your photos in a PDF, you can just insert the file. And again, we'll just open up the files that you've got. So this has got ones that I've got in the cloud, but also ones on the iPad. So you do need to know where your file is. This is the thing I find most difficult, is remembering where my files are. So I have a Procreate. If you look here, I have a Procreate folder, and in that folder, if I go down, I've got tools. And in here, the only files I ever import are these things, which are color palettes. So you can basically Google a color palette, download it, screenshot it, however you want. You could just screenshot a color palette, and then once it's a file, you can import it into your image. So quite often I do this for color. I'm doing it less these days. I used to always do this for every drawing I did. So if you want to import, say, this color palette, you can just tap on it and it will be imported. So I used to always import them. It's on a separate layer. If you go over here, you can see it comes in separately. So it's not part of the bird image. And you can just move it up and down. Oof, no, I've just brought the wrong image. Oh, I just stamped. That's what I did. Like, what did I do then? I stamped. Ah, it's stamping on me now. That's why. It's because I haven't clicked the arrow here. If you need to move it, you click the arrow. And then you can move this up your page. So I used to always, with every drawing, have this at the top of my page and do the rest of the drawing below it. And then lock it. So I'm going to talk about layers. Layers are really important. We're going to use them a lot, especially if you're going to digital stamp. It's really useful to use layers to make the stamps. So if you're bringing something in on a layer and you then don't want to draw on it, you need to lock the layer. So what I just did then, I brought in this palette because I want to use this palette. And then to lock it, if you tap here, it will, no, not tap, slide, sorry, half asleep. If you slide to the left, you open this little menu. This is locked because I just locked it without, just automatically, I wasn't thinking. So unlock it. And then if I slide it to the left, I can lock it. And that means I can't draw on it. So usually if I'm drawing, I'll have one layer that I do my original sketch on. I have another layer that I'll have a palette on. So it's really important to lock those layers if you don't want to draw on them. I know someone asked about that the other day on Mighty Networks. Somebody was asking why you would lock layers. It's because you don't want to draw on it. And the other thing that I would usually do is rename the layers, because if you rename the layers, then you don't get confused about what's in each layer. It doesn't matter when we've only got 3 layers, it doesn't matter. But when you've got sort of 10 or 15 layers, it's much harder to figure out what's on each layer. So if you rename them, so to rename them, you just click on the name. If you tap on that, tap on this bar, this menu will come up, and then you can just choose rename. And my keyboard is right down. It's asking me if I want to use the keyboard, and I do. So I just need to tap there and say, show me the keyboard. Oh, and I've just closed it down again by accident. So I'm going to rename it bird image. I'm going to get rid of layer 1 because I don't really need layer 1. I'm going to delete it. There we are. So it's good to name them. I should probably have named this one as well. But once you've got the layers, every time you open a layer, you should name it. And every time you finish drawing on that layer, you should lock it. What I very often do at this stage is I create another layer for drawing, so you do that simply by pressing the plus. And a new layer appears above the layer I'm on. And then often I want to draw the image to make a stamp of it. And I forget. And I forget what I'm doing. And I end up back on this image and I end up drawing it on that, which is, oh, I need to change my brush. So I have a brush that draws. There we are. So I want to draw, say, the image of this bird, but I'll spend 5 minutes drawing, then go to lock the layer and find that I'm on the wrong layer. So I have to start all over again because I've drawn it on the bird image, which is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do it in this blank layer here. So that's why we always lock. We always name and lock the layers. So the bird image, I'm going to lock. So I'm going to swipe it to the left, press lock, and now I can't draw on it. So the only layer I can draw on is this one, which is my open layer. And that's what I want to do. So I wanted to show you another way of making a palette. So the other way of making a palette, if you click on the dot in the corner here, which is your color dot, it will open up lots of palettes. Again, I've got many. And one of the reasons I don't use them is I've got so many, it's really hard to figure out where I need to be. So if you click on the plus, you can then click on new from photo, and you can make a new palette from a photo. So if you click on new from photo, it will open up your photo album. You can go back to the same photo that we're using now. And where's my, there it is. Open my drawing expressions, and I can say, I want a palette from the bird. And it's created me a whole palette of the colors in that image.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
It's really easy. And what I find now is if I'm out and about and I'm saying I'm in a shop and I really like the color palette, I will take a photo and save it. Or if you see something and, you know, you might see a print in a museum or something, whatever you see, if you really like the color palette, take a photo, because you can then make a palette here of really nice colors. So I actually wanted to show you how to do this with the flower one, because the flower is lovely, and that's why I gave you the flower photo. So again, if I press click up here and then do new, you can just take an image with your camera, but I've never had my iPad with my camera and needed to do that. So the only one I really use is the photos. But if we go back to photos, go back to the photos I put aside for here, I wanted to use this one because it's just got lovely colors. So if I click on that, I've then got, and that's a beautiful palette, and that's from the flowers. So you don't really have to figure out what colors will go together. You can just take a really, you know, take a photo of something that you think is really nice and looks great. And you can create a palette from it. So I find it doesn't work so well with portraits. I think it struggles to capture the colors in people's faces. So it doesn't work so well with portraits, but for doing it for any other kind of image, it's a really good idea. There's also there's an app which I have on my phone. Just going to try and remember what it is, which when you're out you can take photos of and it will automatically turn them into palettes. Palette Cam, it's called. So, and I have that on my phone, but I don't use it very often because I forget. But it's called, yeah, Palette Cam, and it's free.
The
And you
CAM,
can just take,
CAM?
yeah, CAM.
Okay.
And it's a free app, and you can just take photos, and it will create palettes for you of the photos that you take. But this function is fabulous.
I was looking for that a couple weeks ago, and I remembered that Kruja had demonstrated one, and I looked and looked and never did find it.
Well, it's Palette Cam, but given that you can do this in Procreate, you don't really need it.
That's right.
Because you can do this. And what I used to do before this function was in Procreate, I'd spend a lot of time on Pinterest. In fact, let me show you on Pinterest. Since we're on the iPad, I can show you very easily. I have whole boards in Pinterest which have palettes. So I've got some palette boards. So if I open up my boards, where's the color palette one? I've got all kinds of things in here, but I have one that is just full of color palettes. There it is. And it's just full. If you just Google or just go onto Pinterest and put in color palettes, it'll come up. I've got so many. It comes up with hundreds. And these are really great if you want to do something with a limited palette, because most of these have 4 or 5 colors in them. So if I want to do something with a limited palette, I'll just go find one on here, and then I'll take a photo of this in Procreate and create that palette in Procreate. So I just go and find, these are obviously colors that I like, but I just go and find something that I really like. So, you know, if I want something all with blues, I can just go screenshot it and then open it in Procreate, and it will give me that color palette. So it's just a really nice way of working. So, and there's hundreds of those. I mean, it's a rabbit hole. You'll spend a long time looking through color palettes, but it's obviously it's much easier than using this very big one. This is a Copic color palette, and the reason I often use it is because I'm very familiar with Copic colors. So for me, it's quite easy to just go and pick, though I'm starting more and more to use. So I have a whole set down here that I really like. I think they're at the bottom. Yeah, these ones, which are from, I bought a brush set, and these came with the brush set. And there's about 10 of them, 10, maybe 12. All of slightly, yeah, they're all derived from flowers. but they're really nice color palettes.
Can you then, once you've done this and you're looking at all these color palettes and you've got some colors on one and other colors on another, can you then combine those two into a new one?
Yeah, you could. Well, except that this is the most colors that any palette would take. So you'd have to create probably 2 color palettes, but you can move colors around. If there are colors there that you don't use, say you decided you were never going to use, I don't know, that color there, you can remove it. To remove it, you just tap on it and hold, and then you get delete, and you can just delete it. Yeah, and you can move them around. Just tap on them and hold.
So then you would move, same process, tap, hold, and move it up to that other one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
You can just move it to a different swatch. And that's what some of these, this one is one where I don't remember what that was for, which is why you should title them. Because the one below, I've got Terry Portrait, so I know exactly what that was for. But I've got some untitled ones here, and I have no idea what they were for. So it's a good idea to name them. So to name them, again, you just, actually, that's not, no, it's there. Just tap on the end of the name here, and it will bring up your keyboard, and you can remove what's there and type in whatever you want. I don't know what that palette was for, but yeah, so if you just tap on the word, it'll just let you. So up here where we just did the palette from image, you know, it makes sense to change that to, so I've just tapped and it's brought up my keyboard, and I should change that to Robin, and then I know what that was, because if I don't do that, I don't know. And the same, the one above was for the flower image. So again, I'm just tapping at the end, and then I'm just going to say flower. So you can give them any name you want. You can also share these palettes. So if you tap on the 3 dots, you can share them. So you could send them to someone else. If you said, I found this great palette, or they said, what did you use for that picture? You can send the palette to someone else. And you can duplicate it if you want to change some of the colors a little bit. You can play around with it. I've never done, the only thing I ever do is I do share them, and you can set that as the default one that always comes up. Yeah, if that's one that you know, if you're working on something for a while and you want it always to be the palette that shows up, then you can just set it as default using those 3.
Okay, up at the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not doing it now. Why is it not doing it? Because I'm not using my pencil. I don't know why it's not doing it now. It's not letting me. Oh, it's because it is the default, of course. Yeah. If I open up another one, it will give me set as default, but that one is the default. You can move these palettes around as well. If you just tap on the whole palette, it will. I'm trying to get it to do it. Come on. No. Tap on the whole palette. Oh, you have to do it at the top. Then it pops out and you can move it. So you can move them into order. So if there's some that you use more than others, you can rearrange them. So you have to tap on this bar at the top. And you can also have palettes as cards. I don't like them like this, so I don't use them, but you can just by clicking this button here. They appear as cards rather than palettes. So more like cards when you're buying paint.
Mine comes up as a wheel.
Yes. Yeah, the wheel is at the bottom. So down here, if you go and click, if you click on this, it will come up as a palette. Okay. So you click on this bit at the end. So you can get you can have the wheel, or you can also have the square. I prefer the square to the wheel, sorry. The square is really helpful if, say you're using one of these colors and you want another color that is just a bit lighter or a bit darker, then that's when I would use the square. So say I was using, I don't know, this green, and I wanted a dark green that is a similar tone to that one, I would just come and pick and just tap down here. You just literally tap on it where you want the color, and that will then appear up there. And all your recent colors will appear here.
You know what I haven't been able to figure out in my playing with this program? Do you see where yours, the word colors, and then you've got the black square and then the white one next to it?
Yeah, yeah.
When I'm changing my pen color or the color that I'm drawing with, I always have to tap that right square.
Oh, interesting. I've never used those up there, I have to say. I don't use them. I don't know why not. I just don't.
I just wondered what the left one was for. I gotta play some more.
It's at the moment it's showing white, but why is it showing white? I will find out. and I'll tell you next week. Okay, so I'm just
Okay.
going to write myself,
Okay.
I'm going to write myself a note. And because I thought one was supposed to be the color you used before, but that wouldn't be the case, because I definitely didn't use white before. So I'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not hard. I just Google and find a video where someone tells me, video on YouTube tells me what to do. So whenever, there are still lots of things in Procreate that I don't use. And if I do want to use them every now and then, or figure out how to use them properly, I will Google and find a video that shows me. So this button is really nice, the harmony. If you just press on harmony, then it will show you colors that harmonize with each other. So, and as you move, if you tap and move those colors around, it will give you different colors. So if you want colors that harmonize well, so these are complementary colors. If you tap on that word complementary, you can have any of these kinds of colors. So say I wanted triadic colors, then it will give me 3 that harmonize. I tap on it again and decide I want split. I don't really know what split complementary is, but it will give me those 3 colors. So if you're trying to create a palette and you're struggling, then it's always worth going to this and finding nice harmonious colors. And the value is just the colors as, I think they call them hexadecimal numbers. So if you have, I don't know, if you have something, I think the Pantone book, you know, if you have like the Pantone book, which is full of color swatches, they will give you the number of the color as well as the name. So you can just type the number in if you know it. You can just type the number in there and it will give you, type it in here and it will give you that color. I've used that sometimes when I've made things. I made some things to sell in Redbubble, and I wanted, so if you import an image, say you're going to create, I don't know, a pillowcase, and you're going to take your image and put it on a pillowcase in an online shop like Redbubble, where you can just take your images and make products with them. If you just put your image on a pillow, it's probably not going to be the right shape. So there's going to be an edge around it. So what I do, if I've done that, I go into here and I find the hexadecimal color of the background. So I would find probably that peach color. It's not going to do it because it's locked. But if you click on it here, it will give you the number. Let me unlock it and I'll show you. So I'm just going to unlock that. So if I now click on that color there. Oh, why is it not? It's not giving me. Ah, there we are. So I'm using the color picker, which is here. You tap this and you get a color picker, which comes up. So I want that color. So I'm just going to tap and that color then appears up here. And then if I go into the color, if I open it up and go into the hexadecimal colors, it will give me that number. So then when I go into Redbubble, it asks me what color I want the background to be when you're making any product. So whatever product you're making, it will say to you, what color do you want the background to be? You can just type that color in here and then your background will be exactly the same color as. So, I would copy this, just cut and paste it, copy the number, then put it in, and then your background will be exactly the same color as this. So I've done that before. I thought I did something in black, and then I've gone into Redbubble, and there's a line where my black meets their black. So I've then come back and put the exact number in, found out what the exact number is, which clearly wasn't quite black. And then you can put that number in, and then it flows seamlessly. There's no edge. But that's a little bit complicated. We'll probably come back to that at some other time. Maybe we'll try making patterns and come back to that, how to do that, if there's an appetite for it. So that's palettes. The other thing I wanted to show you, which I've only just found out to do, is how to create a paper texture. So normally, if I want paper texture, I import one. So I have lots. Again, I'll go back to my photos and show you. So you can just Google, if you just Google paper textures, there they are. You'll find lots of free ones. If you put paper textures for Procreate, something like that, you'll find lots of free paper textures. And these are ones that I've just imported into, they're just photos of paper. I mean, you could take photo yourself of paper that you really liked, and just put it in photos. So normally if I'm importing, what I've always done before is just go into add photo. So click up here, go into insert a photo. And then if I find my paper textures album, there it is. So I think one of these is canvas, another's watercolor paper, but they're also different colors. So normally if I wanted one, I would just import it. Why? Oh, it's coming slowly. So it's put it right across the whole image. But then what you do is if you go up here, you choose the inserted image here, choose this layer, tap on the N, and you can reduce the opacity. So if we just slide that down to wherever you want it, really, you can also put it on multiply, which makes it transparent. But I prefer to just reduce the opacity because I don't think multiply shows up that well. So, but you can try, there's all kinds of different functions which you can play with. But that now has a paper texture over it. But the other day, when I was browsing Procreate videos, I found a really good video on how to create your own paper textures, which it had never occurred to me to do before. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And I've done lots of it now. I have, if I go back, I've created, go back to my gallery. I created all these different canvases. So these are all different canvases that you can, yeah, you can just make. So if you want, so I'm going to start again with a new window, any size paper. So I've just opened a sheet of A4 paper, but you can do it in any size. And then you just need a brush, and the brush that this person recommended was, can I find it? Yes. In the sketching brushes. So in the Procreate sketching brushes, she recommends these ones. So if you go right to the bottom, if you open up those brushes and go to the bottom, there are various pastels. So the soft pastel. Now, if you've bought other brushes that also have these kinds of textures, you can use the brushes that you've bought as well. But most of the ones I did the other day, I just used this. She uses oil pastels a lot, but I didn't really like what that did. But so if you click on that, so you've selected the pastel brush and then choose a color. Now, if we're doing paper, you generally want, so go up here again, pick up the colors. I'm going to go back to my palettes. I mean, most paper that I draw on is either cream colored or light gray. So I'm just going to go, I just have this light gray here. So I'm just picking up a light gray. But if you don't have one, you can just go to your square. And there's usually a light gray at the bottom of the blues. I mean, there's a light gray in every color. If you move that around, you'll get light grays, but it depends. If you do it in the blues, then you get a really nice bluey gray. So you can just tap somewhere over here to pick up a gray. And then, so I have the brush on its highest setting and I'm just drawing with it. So it's open to full size, 100%. And I'm just drawing with it. And it's creating that pastel paper texture. And then what you do is you duplicate it. So once you've got what you want, you just slide it to the left and duplicate. And that's still a really nice light color, which I'm pleased about. And then you set those two layers to multiply. So that to do that, you need to tap the N and it will open up this menu. And if you go to the top of the menu, you have multiply. So choose multiply. And then you can close the layer down and then do the same with the bottom layer.
I'm not sure that I understand why you're doing the multiply. I don't.
It's because we're going to draw in between these layers and we want these layers to be transparent because it's a paper texture.
So once you set the texture, it doesn't duplicate itself to each layer that you add?
Yes. Yeah, if you do duplicate, it won't do. it won't duplicate it to each layer that you add unless you duplicate it. Let me go back and I'll show you again. Let me go back to the beginning.
So every time you add a layer, you have to create the texture?
No, we just have two layers. We have one at the bottom and one at the top.
Can you do it in a darker color too this time? Because
yeah, I will.
It didn't show up. Okay, thank you.
I'll do it darker. Let me just clear the layers. Clear. So if I go for, let's go for this bluey gray. So I'm using the texture brush. So this will come out very dark when we, so you need to use a light one when you're doing this, because it's hard to draw between. If you use, I'll show you in a moment why. So I have some texture there, and then I'm going to duplicate the layer. So I'm just going into the layer. That's the wrong layer. Going into the layer, sliding it to the left, and then in the middle here, you've got duplicate. So if you duplicate, you then have two layers, and we set them to multiply. So you do that by clicking on the N. But you see, once you set it to multiply, it becomes very dark. And this is why you have to use a light color, because it just becomes a very dark color. But that's fine. We can reduce it if we want to as well. Just by moving the opacity.
I guess I'm not sure that I understand why you're having to multiply.
No, I'll show you in a moment.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So I will show you, I promise. No, that's fine. It's fine to ask questions. So I'm going to set this one to multiply as well. I don't know that you actually have to set the bottom one to multiply. In fact, if I don't, let me show you. If we don't have a bottom layer, I'm going to show you. Hold on. Let me turn that layer off. If you don't have a bottom layer, what happens is if you then draw on it, so let me choose a pink brush. If you draw on it with quite a dark brush, what happens is, let me do that bigger so you can see. I don't know if you can see, but where I've drawn, there is no paper texture. So there is texture here, but when you draw over it with what is effectively a flat brush, you lose the texture. And that's why you need the layer on top as well.
Oh.
So quite often you can do, if you, I have a white, I'll do this in white, but with the canvas, with the soft pastel, it looks like white canvas. So if we add a layer on top, if we turn on the layer on top, then there is texture over the area that we've drawn. I'm going to switch that to multiply. And then what you do, see, I've drawn on top of it, which I shouldn't have done. I should have drawn in a different layer. But if you then lock them, I'm going to remove that. I'm going to remove the black. But you basically lose the texture when you draw over it with a flat brush.
Okay.
Because it will draw in the texture of that brush. But we want the paper texture as well. We want both. We want the texture of a brush and the paper texture. So I'm just setting the bottom one to multiply as well. And then if you lock both of those, so if they're too dark at this point, you can just go back and make them lighter. But then once you've done this, we're going to draw. So on this one, you have your pencil on here and click the plus, and it will open layers in between. And if you draw on the layers in between, it keeps the texture. You don't lose the texture because it's showing through. So if you look here, that you can see, I don't know if you can see well enough on the screen, but it will keep the texture, and that's why we do it.
Okay.
So that's why you need it on the top and the bottom. And everything you draw, you can draw in layers in between those two textures. But that will keep the texture. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to show you with another one. Let me get rid of that one. Because there's one I've got that gives you like little black bits and pieces in it that are like in the paper texture, which works. So this isn't a Procreate brush. This is a brush that I bought. But I'm just trying to remember where it is. It's higher up, isn't it? It's in Dreamland. Where are those brushes gone? I can't find them now. Are they higher up? Nope. Oh, there they are. So here, this one is a paper texture. Like, maybe I'll use the messy grain one. Right. So I'm just going to use this brush because I think you can see better if I show you. So in this one, you can see that it's got bits.
Yeah.
and this one is already set. I bought this paper texture brush and it's already set as on multiply, so I can't change that. That's how the brush works. So if I do the second layer, you get a bit more texture. And then if we lock them and you draw in between, oh, I've done that the wrong way. That needs to come down. Sorry, I'm just trying to move my layer down. So it's in between. There we are. Now I can draw in the middle and it should keep the texture. So if I draw with something smooth like that, oh, I'm in the wrong layer again. I need to make it darker so that you can see it. Can you see that you can still see the texture through it?
Yeah.
If it's not on multiply, that won't work. So that's why you have to have it on multiply. If I take it off, if I take that top layer off multiply, oh, I've lost the color. Yeah, there's no texture in it. There's a little bit where it's lighter, but the texture mostly disappears.
Okay.
So we do it so that the texture will show up. And that image, let me show you that image. So the image of the robin, which is in here, this one, all that texture is because I've used a watercolor paper. I've used a watercolor paper brush basically, and it's created all that texture in it.
You can see the texture on his breast.
You can see it really well in that one. Yeah.
That's
So
cool. You can see it in the dark parts too, really.
Yeah, and it just makes it look less digital because you're adding texture to it. So let's go back. So I'm just.
Is that the same robin issue?
It's the one that's in the photo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I use the photo. So we'll use that. We'll use that photo to do it.
Cool.
So I'm just looking. Okay, now we can do the creating a stamp. So this is quite complicated, or it feels quite complicated the first time you do it, but the hardest bit is actually making the brush rather than doing the picture. The picture is easy. So we're going to start with a new canvas, with a square canvas. So it's really important, if you want something to be a Procreate stamp, that it's on a square canvas. So we're just going to start with a square, and we're going to start with we're going to use the studio pen that I'm just looking, it's in the inking set on. So I'm looking for my inking set. I've moved it into a brush set of my own, but where's the ink is? I have so many.
It's near the top.
Oh, there we are. There it is. Yeah. So it's the one that has the little nib next to it. So if you just go into that and pull out the studio pen, that's what we're going to use. And we're going to use black. So to find black, you just go to the square and it's just in the bottom corner. So if you just tap in the bottom corner there, it'll give you a black. So what we'll do with next week is, I think we'll use some of the photos. We might have time to do one today, I'll see. But I thought we'll start off just by drawing. So I have a whole set. I showed you the set earlier, which had all the leaves in it. So you can start just by literally drawing a flower or a leaf. It doesn't matter. The reason I use the studio brush is it gives you quite thick, the studio pen, it gives you quite thick lines. I think those lines are a bit too thick. Maybe not. So to make a stamp, you need a black and white image, basically. That one, I haven't got enough space to make the leaf I want to make at the end, so I'm going to make it smaller. And to do that, you just click on that arrow there and reduce it a bit. And now I've got space, and then click on the arrow to turn it off. So now I have space. And you can then make a stamp out of that, because it's a very straightforward. You might want to add a bit more. So let's just make the bottom of the leaves a bit more. You might want to make them a bit more interesting. It doesn't, for this drawing, it doesn't matter. This is just, I'm just showing you the principle of making a stamp. So we can just create a black and white image. And then to make a stamp, so the first thing you need to do is copy your black and white image. In fact, I'm going to invert it. Forgot about the invert. So you have the image. If you can just use a black canvas and draw with white, but I find it easier to draw with black on white. But when you've done that, you have to invert it. So you pull up this menu and down the bottom now you've got invert. We can't see it now because my background is, there it is. Because the background is white and I inverted it, it was white on white, so you couldn't see it. But this is why I generally prefer to draw with black on white. So it's just inverted it and I've turned off the background color. If I make the background color black, you'll be able to see it there. So we just drew it black on white and we've inverted it because for stamps in Procreate, it needs to be white on black. But you could draw white on black if you wanted to. I just prefer to do it this way. So once you've got your image, you can either just copy it. So to copy it, you can export it, or you can just copy it. To copy it, you can use, I think you can do it in that menu. Yes, you can. So if you click, it'll pull up this menu and you can just choose copy. Or there's a shortcut. I don't use most of the Procreate shortcuts, but I do use this one because it's the one I always remember. And it's basically you tap on your screen with 3 fingers. And you swipe down slightly and this menu will come up and you can then just copy on that menu. It's a bit quicker than opening up the layer. So I use this menu a lot, but it's the only one of the kind of functions that you do with your fingers that I really use. But it's just, you just tap with 3, but you have to use 3 fingers. It's a tap and a slight swipe down. And then you can just copy. And it will copy the layer. Copy all means you wanted to copy all the layers.
I thought the 3 fingers and the swipe down would erase the whole thing.
Oh, maybe you might have yours set differently. It depends what you've got set in gesture controls.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can reset that. So if we go over here, I'll explain what I mean by that. Over here in the preferences, if you open up preferences and then you come down to gesture controls,
Okay.
there, tap on that. It gives you all the gestures you want. I have deliberately disabled most of my touch gestures because
okay.
I've done that because I touch the screen a lot while I'm drawing and it starts doing things that I don't want it to do. So I've disabled a lot of them. The only one I've kept is that menu. And you can choose how that menu opens. It's the quick menu option here.
Okay.
So, and I've got it. I haven't actually got it on 3-finger swipe, but it's doing it. That's interesting. It's not showing it, but it works. It still works for me, even though it's not enabled, which is very weird. But you can set it. So if you want it to work in a particular way, you can. So okay. The Apple Pencil double tap, I used for a while, but I still found that I was sometimes tapping and it was bringing up things I didn't want. So I only used the 3-finger swipe.
Okay. Thank you.
My iPad's telling me I shouldn't be able to do that, but but I do. It's the same with the other control there that's quite useful is obviously the eyedropper one, which is the one you use for picking colors. So mine is saying that they're all disabled and that isn't disabled. It should be touch with an Apple Pencil. So I'm not sure why it's saying, but you can set that so it works however suits you, really. Those are the 2 things that I do use gesture controls for. I use them for color dropper and I use them for cut and paste. So in this case, I'm going to copy that image. So I've just tapped copy, but you can do it in the layer menu here if you prefer, just by tapping on it and choosing copy there. So once you've got the image, we're then going to go to the brush menu and you're going to press plus because we're going to create a brush. So the first thing we're going to do is go to shape here. So where it says shape, tap on shape and you get shape source and then you want to edit it. So we say edit. And then you can import. And if you've just done cut and paste, just done copy, you can just paste. And that image goes in. There's a couple of other things you have to do because it's not quite set as a stamp yet. So the other things, I have a list of them. I'm going to make sure I've got them. So go to stroke path. You can leave that, that's done. So you can tap done and it will be done. Then you want to go to stroke path at the top. This was what took me a while to figure out, because I kept turning it off, and actually you need spacing at maximum. So you just move spacing at the top there to 100%. Then I'm just checking what's the next thing. Oh yeah, the Apple Pencil function. Open that and tap opacity. You want opacity at 0. Yeah, that's right. And then go to properties. I have had to write this down because I can't do it without writing it down. And at the top, you'll see it says use stamp preview. So you say, yes, please, I want to stamp. And then you can choose the size of your stamp. So if we make it bigger, you can make it bigger and bigger, and you can have a minimum size. The only way really to figure out if your size is what you want or not is to click done and then stamp it on a bit of paper. So if we delete that layer, I want that to be white. In fact, the easiest thing is to open a new one actually. So just open a new piece of paper and then stamp with your brush. And if it's too big, if you want it smaller, you can just go back. So if you want to make it smaller, just go back into your brush menu. Your brush is there now. You need to give it a name, which we'll do in a moment anyway. But for me, that's a bit too big. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to make it a bit smaller. But you can play around with these until you find a size that suits. You saw earlier when I was printing with the bear, it was much too big. If you know you're going to do something where it needs to be smaller, you can just make it smaller just for those purposes and then increase the size again. So the only other thing you need to do is go to about this brush and you can give it a name. So you can go up here, just tap on that and you can replace that name. So just call it, I'm just going to call it leaf. And then you can sign. So that if you share it with anyone, so just sign your name. You can add your name up here as well.
And what do
you've made a stamp.
What do you use the stamps for?
You can use them for all kinds of things. Let me see if I can find some pictures to show you. So those, the ones that I was showing you earlier, let me go find them in my gallery. So I made a set of cards for, trying to go back in my gallery, go back. I don't know if I've got the cards on this one on my other iPad. Just looking to see if they're on here. Where are my grow cards? Oh, here we are. Yeah, so I made a set of cards for this farm. So these were the images for the front of the card. So they're basically just a stamp with a background. So we have time. Maybe we'll have a go at doing a very simple. We'll have a simple go at the robin, or maybe, yeah. I don't think I have any other pictures saved. So these are their photos. They gave me lots of photos, and I then used the photos. They're called Grow, and I used the photos to create various cards for them, basically. So, but you can use them for all kinds of things. There's another one. Where's the? Oh yeah, these were. This is a whole other set that I've made. Just play again. I've made them. So I made this into a card. Various of them are just cards. So I'm looking. Yeah, this one was fun. These stamps. I just made it. You can make a pattern which you can then. You can, again, on sites like Redbubble, you can literally put patterns on their products and sell stuff. So you can make patterns with them, but mostly I just play with them. Some of them you can make like a texture stamp. So if you wanted a texture, you can just make a stamp with texture. So
you could import these back to your photos,
yeah,
and like print them out, and okay.
Yeah.
And
during the pandemic, I had masks with some of them on. So because again, lots of online sites were selling masks. I had one with my dog. I'll see if I can find that for next week. So I got a mask printed with my dog's face on it, so that when I was out and about, I had my dog's face. There are a lot, there are lots of sites like Redbubble and what's the other one? Society something, can't remember. And Spoonflower is another one. There are lots of sites where if you create patterns or images, you can have products with these images on them. But mostly I make cards with them. So I make like birthday cards and things. And my daughter, where's the sealskin one?
But you could put them on correspondence or whatever.
Yeah, on anything. Yeah, that's the wrong one. So she had a film project called Sealskin. So I made them a logo for their film project.
Okay.
So that became their logo. But yeah, I mean, really, it's just fun, mainly. This one was a really complicated one where it was a picture of a tree. So let me open. So that was the tree.
Wow.
And then I wanted to put a moon behind it. And again, that's not hard because I had a photo. It was a photo I'd taken. So I had the photo and you literally, I'm going to show you the principle of doing it. So let's have a go at the robin because I think we still have time. So even if we don't finish the robin, we can finish it next week. We can start. So I'm going to do a square canvas. So open up a square canvas. I like to have mine not quite filling the iPad, so I make it a bit smaller. And then we're going to go over here and we're going to import a photo. So we're going to go to add, which is here. And we're going to put insert a photo. And then if you go to the robin photo, which I've got in here somewhere. So there's the robin. So, and then I'm going to fit him to the canvas. So I'm going to do fit to size. I'm going to make him a bit bigger because I want it to fill the stamp area. Almost. So I'm still going to make him bigger. That's probably big enough. Okay. And then now I've resized it, I'll just turn that sizing off up here. So then I want another layer. So you're going to open another layer on top of this one. And I need to switch those about. Do I need to switch them about? No, I don't. No, I don't. That's fine. So for this layer, for the layer of the robin, I'm going to lower the opacity a little bit. So I want to make it a little bit transparent, but not too much. I still want to see all his detail. So I've taken it down to about 60%. And then lock it so that you don't draw on top of that. Because if you do, it's not going to work. So we're actually drawing on a white layer. So on this layer, we're going to get our studio pen that we were just using. We're going to keep it in black. And to start with, the easiest way, oh no, I've got the wrong pen up. To start with, the easiest way to start it is to just draw an outline. I'm imagining his tail because I can't see where it goes. So we're just going to draw an outline. So you can do this with any of your photos, any animal, all those stamps that I made. This is how I made them. And there are people who sell lots of fancy brushes for carving, but I find just this brush is absolutely fine. Really don't need anything else. Again, I'm just imagining a bit of his claws because I can't see it. So once you've got an outline, you want to just look for the features that you would want on a stamp. So we want the eye. I'm going to put a line down the middle of the beak so we can see the beak. I kind of think we want the wing, this wing here. So I'm going to draw the wing in. And I want some of the feathers on the wing. And remember, you don't have to be drawing this robin exactly, although we're using this robin for the picture underneath. You can change it and play around with it if you want. And then I'm just going to add. Actually, I'm going to color it all first. I'm adding all these details and thinking I need to fill it with black first. So in theory, if you don't have any gaps in your drawing, you can I never managed to do it. You can take the black color. I've just changed the color by accident. And you can drag it. So you tap on it and drag it across and it fills, but it never works for me. Oh, and it did it. There we are. normally I end up filling the whole thing and it's a complete waste of time. So there's a little bit at the bottom that isn't filled, so I'm going to fill that. So once you get to this point, you can't see your picture underneath because it's all black. So if you go to the layer menu and click on N, you can lower the opacity. So that I've gone down to about 33%. I might have to go a little bit higher than that. Yeah, maybe about 42%. So I can still see the bird, but this is all black around it. This is all black. It's just we've lowered the opacity of it. So now you can see his features. So now you can just, now it's all black. We're basically going to carve out his features. So we're going to use white. So instead of black, you're going to go to white. And you can carve all his features out with white. So all the bits that you want to, that's not going to work there. Everything that you want to show in your stamp, you can basically just draw on this in white. So I'm going to move that there. So we've got some feathers. We've got a wing. I'm going to redo that because I don't think I did that right. So I'm using the image as my inspiration, but I'm not necessarily going to do everything. I want the line for the beak, so I've put that in. I want a line around his eye. So I want to see where his chest changes. So I'm just literally drawing sort of like little feathery lines around there. There isn't, obviously this is his wing at the back down here. So I need to put a little line in there to show that's his wing. And again, I'm going to do little lines on either side of his, I'm going to carve on either side of his legs. No, I don't like that, so I'm going to undo that. So this is the thing, you can just keep playing around with it. So now if I increase the opacity, there we are, I can see the lines I've drawn and I can play around with them. So I haven't done his eye right. So I'm going to fill in the inside of his eye and then add that highlight in white. Now that might be enough. I'm looking at the edges and some of my edges are a bit rough, so I'm going to smooth them up. But I don't think it matters if a lot of this is rough, because if you were carving it on lino, the edges would be rough anyway. You can add as much detail as you want. So if you want to add lots more feathers, then add lots more feathers. So we can add more here. We might do the whole thing. When I'm doing animals, I really like adding all the fur. So once you have an image, I'm just looking at his feet and thinking I need to do something with his feet because they're a bit wonky. So I'm going to switch back to black and just draw in his feet. So once you've got an image you're happy with, you can delete. So you need to unlock the bird layer here, unlock the layer that your drawing was on and delete it. Oh, I haven't unlocked it. So click unlock and then click delete and it's gone. And all you have is your bird. And then we're going to do exactly what we did a moment ago. So you're going to either open up the layer menu and copy. So either just tap on that blue bar and copy. We'll do it this way this time. Or you could use the three finger drag. And then you're going to go to your brush library. Oh no, I've done the layers instead. Click on add a brush. So first thing we do is go to shape, edit, import, and paste. Ah, I didn't invert it. That's why we have to invert it. I forgot to invert it. So abandon the brush. We need to go back and invert our drawing. I forgot. So we go back to the layer menu. And on the layer that your bird is on, click the menu and invert. You'll know as soon as you've done it wrong because obviously it will do what it just did then. It didn't show up properly. Okay, that's fine. Oh, so I meant to go to the, and I haven't copied it now, have I? Let me go to my layer menu, copy. So it looks like there's nothing, but when you open up the layer menu, you can see the whole bird. So copy the image. Then we're going back to the brush library and adding a brush. So if you go to shape, edit, import, paste, there's the bird. Now it looks right. And then we have to do all the other things. So we have to go to straight path and up there and make it 100% maximum. Oh, I've lost my shape. I didn't save it. I'm going to have to do it again. Sorry. Excuse me a moment. Right. I thought I'd pressed done, but I must have pressed cancel. There we are. At the moment, we have lots of birds there. So we've done the straight path. Then the next thing we need to do is the Apple pencil. And we need to set opacity to 0 because you want a really strong black stamp. So you don't want the opacity to be different. Then we're going to go to properties, which is below that menu, and toggle on the stamp preview at the top there. Toggle that on and then decide what size. Difficult to tell sometimes, but yeah, that looks like a good size, I think. He's just gone really small now. I don't know what I did there, but I changed the size by accident. Minimum size. Yeah, I do want a minimum size. Then if you go to about this brush, and the only thing you can do with the size is just try it and see, and change it if it needs changing. So if we go and tap on the brush, you can change the name. I'll just change it to bird. I think I've already got a bird, but now I've got 2. You can add your name because you made this brush. And you can sign. I mean, that's basically a copyright feature. It's not very effective because if you make a small change to it, then you've changed the brush and that the name will disappear. But it's a copyright feature, so it's your brush. Done. And then let's stamp it and see. So let me clear that layer. Okay. And then choose my bird brush. Yes. And we have a stamp. And then what it's nice to do, since we still have some time, let's do that. We can add a layer. This is the other thing that you can do. So first of all, you can go onto your stamp. Once you've stamped it, if you want to give it some texture, because normally if you're doing a lino print or a woodcut or any kind of stamp, it's not completely smooth. It has little bits of texture. So I always add a little bit of texture. So I scruff it up, and that's what the heavy metal brush is for. So if you get the heavy metal brush and switch to white, then you can, generally I lower the opacity, so I don't want the opacity right at the top because you just want it to look a little bit, have a little bit of texture on the stamp, and then just brush over the stamp. That's not, oh, it's showing up a bit, but yeah. So some areas will look more, I've done a bit much there. Some areas will look more rubbed than others, but if you have, generally, if you have a stamp, you'll almost never get it perfectly smooth. So some areas will be more textured than other. So just add some texture to it. And then you can create a layer underneath it. So I've got a layer above it, but I'm just going to move it. So to move it, just tap and hold and it'll move. And then you can drag it below. And then you can just get a nice color. Get a color that you like. So I'm going for a color that represents sky. And then I would probably go to the painting brushes and choose a nice painting brush. Now, I'm always going to go for the wet acrylic brush because I really like it. But you can use any brush you've got. And then I'm going to make it quite big. So we're creating a shape underneath it. You can go right to the edges if you want. I like it, again, being a bit rough. So we've added some color, and then you can add some texture to that as well. So you can do that by either bringing in some paper. Maybe I'll add some paper to it. So if you go over here, then you have insert a photo again. You can do this on another layer. And I'm going to go down to my textures. Or you can just use, you could start with one of the textures that we've created, but I'm just going to add. So I'm just adding a texture over the top. Ah, I'm in the wrong layer, aren't I? Yeah, no, I'm not in the wrong layer, but it needs to be above. The texture needs to be above the bird, so I'm going to move it. Ah, maybe I'll move the bird. There we are. See, it's disappeared. That's why we have to lower the opacity, because as you lower the opacity, it reappears, but there's texture now on my page. It doesn't quite fit the page, so I'm going to fit to canvas. No. And then make it bigger, so you cover the whole thing. And that now has a paper texture over it.
So how do you get the bird darker? You just do the opacity thing again on that layer?
Yeah, well, no, you could duplicate it. Just if you just open the menu, slide it, open the layer, slide it to the left, you can duplicate and merge down. It's not making much difference, is it? I think you'd have to, yeah, you just have to lower the opacity a bit more. Yeah, there we are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just lower the opacity. The other thing is you can play around with the other things in the menu, because sometimes they have an unexpected effect. I'm not sure if it's going to.
Oh, yeah, darken the blue. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can just play around with the menu and see what happens. That's made the background almost disappear. I know lots of people who I watch online often use the overlay for like highlights and shadows, but I can't really figure out how to get it to work. I have to say, I've tried many times. That's really nice, because it's become really dark. So that was subtract. It's always worth, whenever you finish anything, it's always worth going and just playing around with these and seeing, yeah, I like the subtract. I like that one. So I might keep that one. Oh, I've done it on, that's the top layer though, not the bottom layer. Yeah, no, that's okay. So you can just play around.
So when you close that out and it goes back to your gallery, it will be just as you finished working on it, right?
Yeah.
You don't, it's not like you have to do a physical save.
No.
It's just,
no,
okay.
If you go out, it's there. And if you duplicate it in the
Okay.
gallery, you get the same thing. And when you open the one that you duplicated, you've still got all those layers.
Okay.
If you don't want the layers, what you can do is just merge down. So if you tap, but then you will lose the paper texture. So I'm not going to do that with the paper texture, but you can just merge down, and then you only have the one layer. And if you save as a picture, if you save as a photo, as a JPEG, then it will lose the layers. That's why when you save, so for saving, we go over to this menu, and saving is all under the share. It will save automatically. But if you want to save it to your photos, you have to go into this menu and choose.
Yeah.
If you save it as a JPEG, it will flatten it, so the layers won't be there. That's why I save them to my photo album, but I will also back them up, because if you back them up, they'll be saved as Procreate files. So if you save it as a Procreate file, that will keep your layers.
Okay.
So you can come back and change it. So if you save it to your photos, and if you back it up, then you'll end up with a Procreate version and a photo version. But the photo version is flattened. It doesn't have the layers when you reopen it. Again, this suggests that you can save it as a PDF as well. I've never done that, so I don't know how that works, but you can share the layers that way. The other thing that you can do is, if you go here to video and you want to watch what you've just done, just press time-lapse replay.
Yeah.
And it will show you what you've done. And you can export that if you want to export it and keep it. But there we are, in seconds. That's what you've done, and that's what you'll have on yours, unless you disable that function. You can disable it if you don't want to. You just turn it off here for any particular drawing, and it won't save it. But I think it's normally enabled. You have to turn it off if you want to turn it off. And then to export it, if you just click there, it'll make a video and it'll save it to your photos. So there will be
I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, it's okay. Carry on.
So this one that you just completed, let's just say you come back to it and you open it up and you want to work on it some more.
Yeah.
How many layers do you have on there now?
I've just saved it. I've just collapsed that one. So that's my duplicate. But on my original one, I've got 3 layers.
So you'd have to go back to the original to add layers and continue to work on it?
No, you don't have to. I just
Okay.
collapsed that one. I just merged down in that one. If I hadn't
Okay.
merged down, so I can undo. Maybe I
You
can't
can-
undo. Should
you
be able
can
to undo the merge down, but it won't let
Well,
me.
That was my question. You can undo the merge? Okay.
You should be able to. For some reason, I can't on this one. I don't know why not. You should be able to undo the merge. So certainly on your original, if you go to your original, if I then merge down, so if I open up the menu and choose merge down and then decide I don't want to, you just press the undo and it will undo it.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
So anything
Okay.
you do wrong, you can just, or you don't like, or you want to change it,
Sure.
you can just turn it down. Yeah, very easily. I mean, you also don't have to stamp in black. You could obviously stamp in any color, but the other thing you can do is with the texture in the background, if you go on the background layer, you can add some texture to that as well. And the one that I often use to do that is in the water. So the water set that comes with Procreate, quite often we'll use either flicks or splashes. So if you choose that and you're on, making sure you're on the background layer, you can just use that brush. If you switch it to white, same color as your paper. Actually, my paper isn't white, so I'm going to color drop. Come on. There we are. So I've got the background color, but you can use white if your paper is white. And then you can just, oh, I need to reduce the opacity. So lower the opacity. Yeah, and now it's got a little bit of texture to it as well. So it looks even more like paint. So what I'm always trying to do, you can make those blotches smaller if you prefer. What I'm always trying to do is try and make my work look less analog. I want it to look as though I was doing it in a sketchbook. Yeah, that's better. So it's a bit lower now. So now we've got some splashy texture in it. But you can use any of the texture brushes. So there's a whole set called Industrial. So again, I have to find them in mine because I don't have them all in order. But there is a set called Industrial. I have all my textures together. So this looks like it doesn't make sense, but it does, because I've got stamps at the bottom. I've got textures together. So I'm just, here they are. So where's the Industrial one gone? Ah, here I am saying it's there and it's not, and I can't find it. Oh, it's reorganized them. It's put them all at the top. I must have just done something. That's why I can't find it. It's put them all at the top now for some reason. So that one is Industrial. If you open up Industrial, you have all these really nice textures, and you can add them to backgrounds. And those are the water ones. And actually some of the organic ones are quite nice too. You can just create like background effects and just play around with them and see what you get, because you can always undo it. It's not, that one's really nice, the spires one. So you can just, yeah, so now it's gone a bit scrubby, but that's because I'm on a different color. But you can make the background look as analog as you want. And you can buy lots of texture brushes. I've bought quite a few because I like to add that texture. Okay, I'm going to stop there. And I don't know if you can, it's hard to show, isn't it, on iPad, but I don't know if you want to try and show what you've done.